Hi, welcome to another Foyer Review. I'm your host, Scott Birmingham. Today, we get kind of a little bit of a treat. We recently had the Emmy Awards, which was, and Behind the Candelabra was up for 15 Emmy nominations. It walked away with 11 out of those 15. Not too shabby. Well, if you watch the movie, you'll know that Michael Douglas starred in as Liberace, and Matt Damon played, well, our guest here, Scott Thorson. Hi, Scott. How you doing, sir?
Good. Good to
Welcome to For Your Review, where we get to talk a little bit about the entertainment business, films, TV, and we're talking a little bit about the relationship between you and Liberace. And now the spotlight has once again cast its light on you and on the late Liberace with the Emmys and with the HBO movie that came out a few months ago. Let's take a look back at all that for just a second. You saw the movie. Did it feel weird to sit and watch this whole thing play itself out in front of you?
Especially, yes, after living the life, and then, as I said earlier, 26 years after writing the book, and then winning 11 Emmys, I'm overwhelmed. I'm delighted.
When you sit and you watch a movie like this, are you kind of nitpicking it, or are you saying, oh, they got that right, but they're kind of loose and fancy free here? I mean, how much of a stickler are you for those details?
Well, when I made the deal back in 2007 with Mr. Weintraub and Steven Soderbergh, the director, I said, please keep it true to the book. And they really did their homework. They researched, they asked me questions, they studied film, clips of Liberace, clips of me, right down to the makeup, to the costumes. I mean, they spent an awful lot of time and money. It's just incredible how they put it all together. So I'm very pleased. I mean, Jerry Weintraub, you can't get any better than Jerry Weintraub and Steven Soderbergh. And so I'm delighted. I had the best producer, directors, and cast. I mean, the cast is fantastic. Makeup we walked away with, costumes.
Well, what made you decide, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write this book? What prompted you to sit down and spend some time to do this?
Well, I think back then when Lee Liberace and I, we had that split, I really got shafted in the deals. I mean, they made me out to be a liar, a disgruntled employee, a gold digger, and they blackballed me from Hollywood. And I fought back, and I dared to fight back. I was very young, and I took this powerful entertainer on. I just felt that people didn't know the true story. And 26 years later now, everybody knows. And I'm a strong believer in karma, and what goes around comes around. And I had to tell the true story. Not say anything bad about Liberace. We all have a dark side about us. I'm not perfect. He's not perfect. I don't think there's anybody on earth that's perfect. But it was a story that had to be told. And it just blows my mind that, here I stand with 11 Emmys, and the people received it so well.
Let's talk a little bit about your first encounter with him and then his last days. Yes. I mean, I'm sure that was quite a cycle of events going on there.
Well, you forget, a lot of people don't realize I was just 16. I didn't come from a very happy home, in and out of foster care, not a wealthy family, and then thrown into the wealth of Liberace at 16, adopted by him, and then he wanted me for his lover. I mean, I was very confused back then. It was, but I think any kid would be. I mean, especially coming from a poor family, like I said, and then thrown into the wealth and the glamour and the glitz. So I did everything I could possibly do to please this man. And eventually, Michael Douglas says, well, it's a love story. It was a love story. It was, we had more good times than bad times. He introduced me to the drugs through the plastic surgeons. I was very confused. I was very young. I became an addict overnight. And he says, well, I've created this monster. Then he just wanted to open the doors and throw me to the streets, which they did. Called me all these names and made me out to be this liar, and so, you know, it's very important for me to write this book, and now the world knows the truth. Give credit where credit's due. He was a wonderful entertainer. He, you know, the greatest showman that ever lived.
Was it sad seeing him in those last days?
Absolutely. I don't wish that on my worst enemy. Of course, he didn't deserve to go out that way. It was very sad. Michael Jackson didn't deserve to go out the way he did. But it just goes to show you the powerful addiction of drugs, sex. You know, Liberace used to say, too much of a good thing is wonderful, but too much of a good thing can kill you. I've had my legal problems because of addiction not too long ago. And I survived it. Mm-hmm. And now it's just time to grow up and smell the roses and enjoy the 11 Emmys and stay tuned for book 2 and movie.
Do you think too much was too much for him?
I think he loved the public, he loved the attention, and he went to great lengths to protect his name. And he was a very private man, and he wouldn't have liked this film because he went to great lengths to protect his homosexuality. Back then, you know, in the 50s, from 50 to 59, he had his television show, Big Star. And then 50 years in the show business. I mean, his 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s on top. His last performance at Radio City, 2.5 million people, the highest paid, and he still holds the record, the highest paid musician in the history of show business. Still holds it. World Book of Guinness, the highest paid and the world's fastest piano player. He was an incredible man. He was ahead of his time. How would you describe Liberace today? Well, he's Elton John and Lady Good.
Do you think he still would have wanted to play if he was around? Or
I don't think so. I mean, he'd be 92 years old today. You know, he was born, what, May 16, 1919. So, I mean, I think he would have played up to, as long as he could have. Other than outside of dying of AIDS, he was a very healthy. He was always very healthy. It was a shock to all of us, especially to me. But that's what I'm saying. Too much of a good thing will kill you.
You were mentioning earlier when we were talking about the Emmys, the fact that he would have shied away from that. He wouldn't have wanted that much attention. But like we were also talking about the contradiction because of his film, when it shows. It was very spectacular, to say the least. And he groomed his shows to be such. Yes. But when the lights were dimmed down and the show was over, he went home, and that's how he wanted it to be. No more attention.
Yeah, he was a very private man, and what he did was he lived in his own world. He built palaces, and my first book, actually I was going to call Prisoner Trapped in Paradise. And the clothes came off, and the terry cloth robes came on, and no jewelry, no makeup. He was a very average man. He would cook, he'd pick up the dog droppings. He did average things. He'd love to shop, he loved the public, he didn't have bodyguards. He did a lot of decorating, he bought homes, he loved to spend money, he loved to shop. He enjoyed life, he enjoyed his stardom. He loved being a star, and he was a tremendous star. There were two sides of Liberace. On stage he was Liberace, then at home he was Lee. I knew him as Lee. I knew both of them. And I think what gave us such a long relationship was because I didn't kiss up to him. I was very real. When he was on stage and when he was in the public, I treated him like a star. But when he was home, he was an average person. He was a good person. He had some faults. I have faults. But you got to give him credit where credit was due.
Right. Well, my last question for you is this. Now, you're in the midst of finishing, I'm not sure what stage you are, in writing Beyond the Candelabra. Yes. Just talk to us really quickly about what that book holds. What do you hope for that one? What's the story you want that to be told there?
I think this book will show my life after Liberace. From 1988, it's going to get into 2013. Very interesting. My ups and downs, the drug addiction, the Witness Protection Program, the Laurel Canyon murders, which is also known as the Wonderling killings, being put on the witness protection, testifying, becoming an evangelist, working with Billy Graham, Pat Robertson, in and out of prison, working with the drug cartel. I keep it very real. I tell the truth. My relationships with Michael Jackson, Loretta Lynn, Larry Gatlin, some of the biggest stars, you know, wined and dined with presidents, queens, and kings, and we hope to get Matt Damon interested in and continue to play Scott Thorson, and I think we have a pretty good shot after winning 11 Emmys. So I'm very excited, very pleased. St. Martin and Simon Schuster are very interested in the second book. The outline's done. It was done by George Rush and Richard Hunter. We're very pleased. Very pleased, and I'm very hopeful that we're going to sell it and move on to second book and second movie. So stay tuned.
Great. You know, Scott, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope we stay in touch and we see what the future holds for you.
Great.
And I wish you a lot of luck. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
This is Scott Birmingham, and this has been a special interview with Scott Thorson, Liberace's former lover, and this is for your review.